What if your most successful years started when you turned 65? What if your breakthrough came after a lifetime of struggle, failure, and rejection? The story of KFC begins not with a booming business or a famous brand, but with a boy named Harland Sanders growing up in a small rural town in Indiana in the late 19th century. Born in 1890 in Henryville, Indiana, Harland experienced hardship from the start. His father, a hardworking man who ran a small farm and worked as a butcher, died suddenly when Harland was only 5 years old. This loss forced his mother to take on long hours of work, leaving young Harland with the responsibility of taking care of his younger siblings. At a very early age, Harland was thrown into the world of adults. He began cooking meals for the family, learning how to make simple dishes to help feed his brother and sister. It was in that modest kitchen, out of necessity and survival, that the foundation for his future was quietly forming. He didn't know it yet, but his earliest experiences cooking would later become the key to his global success. His mother worked hard to support the family, but times were tough. The pressures at home meant Harland couldn't focus much on school. By the time he reached the 7th grade, he dropped out of school entirely. It wasn't because he didn't care about learning, but because life demanded that he earn a living. From the age of 12, Harland took on various jobs to help provide for his family. He worked on nearby farms, performing backbreaking labor to earn a few cents a day. Over the years, he took on job after job, sometimes lasting only a few months at a time. He was a farmhand, a streetcar conductor, a railroad fireman, an insurance salesman, and even a soldier for a brief period. These jobs took him across the country and exposed him to many people, places, and situations. He failed often and was fired more than once. But with each change, he picked up new skills and new ideas. His early adult years were not marked by success but by struggle and persistence. In many ways, Harland was a wanderer, searching for something that would finally stick. He was resourceful, quick to adapt, and never too proud to start again from nothing. Although none of his early jobs brought him lasting success, they taught him valuable life lessons: how to deal with people, how to manage under pressure, and how to remain resilient in the face of disappointment. One of his longest-lasting roles came when he started working for the railroads. It was physically demanding work, but it paid better than most of his earlier jobs. During this time, he also got married and started a family. However, the pressures of financial instability and constant relocation put a heavy strain on his personal life. Eventually, his marriage fell apart, adding emotional difficulty to an already challenging existence. Harland found himself in his 40s with no money, no steady job, and no clear direction. But he never gave up. Despite everything, he kept pushing forward, always believing that his break might still come. That break came in a very unexpected way. In the early 1930s, during the Great Depression, Harland opened a service station in Corbin, Kentucky. There, travelers would stop for gas and rest before continuing on their long drives. Harland noticed that many of these travelers were hungry, and he saw an opportunity. With no restaurant nearby, he began cooking meals for people using recipes he had learned as a boy. At first, he served food out of his own kitchen, offering fried chicken, biscuits, and mashed potatoes. Word spread quickly that this little gas station had some of the best food in town. Soon, people were coming not just for fuel, but for a home-cooked meal they couldn't get anywhere else. Harland's chicken was especially popular. He took great pride in the way he prepared it, carefully seasoning it with a blend of herbs and spices he had developed through trial and error. The meals weren't fancy, but they were comforting, filling, and full of flavor. As business grew, Harland expanded his operation and turned part of the station into a small restaurant. He still worked long hours and struggled to make ends meet, but for the first time, he felt he had found his calling. He wasn't just surviving, he was creating something that people truly appreciated. During these years, Harland continued refining his cooking technique. He experimented with new methods to cook chicken faster without sacrificing taste. Eventually, he discovered that using a pressure cooker allowed the chicken to cook quickly while still keeping it juicy and flavorful. This was a major breakthrough. It allowed him to serve more customers efficiently and maintain a consistent taste and texture. The method, combined with his special blend of 11 herbs and spices, became the foundation of what would later be known as Kentucky Fried Chicken. Even local critics and food writers took notice of the small-town cook with the big flavors. Harlan's restaurant began winning awards and receiving mentions in newspapers. The governor of Kentucky recognized his contribution to the state's cuisine and honored him with the title of Colonel, a symbolic gesture that added charm and pride to his growing reputation. He embraced the name, dressing in a white suit and black string tie, creating the image that would become iconic around the world. Though his fame was still local, the seeds of a global empire had been planted. Yet his journey was far from over. The real test was still ahead. A man who had seen more failures than most people could imagine had finally begun to taste success. And it all began in a small town, in a tiny service station, with one man and his belief that good food made with care could make all the difference. As Harlan Sanders' small restaurant in Corbin, Kentucky grew more popular, his sense of purpose deepened. He had finally discovered a way to combine his love for food with his drive to serve others, and he poured himself into improving every part of the business. He was not a trained chef, and his kitchen was far from luxurious, but he treated every plate he served with pride. His recipe had become the star attraction, and people traveled from miles away to taste his famous fried chicken. By the late 1930s, the restaurant was thriving. Harlan renovated the building, added tables, and hired more help to keep up with demand. Still, he remained involved in every detail. He greeted guests, managed the kitchen, and made sure his chicken was always cooked to perfection. The pressure cooking method had revolutionized his kitchen. It allowed him to serve consistent, tender, crispy chicken in a fraction of the time it would take to pan-fry or oven-bake. This consistency became his signature. Customers knew what to expect and they kept coming back. But just as success was starting to feel real, disaster struck. In the early 1950s, a new interstate highway was built, and it bypassed Corbin entirely. Overnight, the flow of travelers that had kept his business alive slowed to a trickle. Fewer cars passed through town, and his once busy restaurant stood quiet. It was a devastating blow. Harlan, now in his 60s, was forced to make a painful decision. He sold the property and paid off his debts, left with little more than his car and a pension check. Most people would have given up at that point. After a lifetime of hard work, failure, and finally, a taste of success, to lose it all again would have been too much for many. But Harlan Sanders wasn't like most people. Instead of retiring quietly, he chose to start over, this time with nothing but a recipe and a vision. He believed that his chicken was good enough to succeed beyond Corbin. He just needed someone else to believe it too. So he packed up his pressure cooker, his spice blend, and a few cooking tools, and hit the road. His plan was to pitch his recipe to other restaurant owners and convince them to serve it in exchange for a small commission on every piece of chicken sold. This idea, what we now call franchising, was not new, but it was rare, especially for a man in his 60s with no formal business training. He drove from town to town, sleeping in his car, cooking samples in restaurant kitchens, and giving his pitch over and over. Most people said no. They didn't trust the idea. Some laughed at him. Others didn't believe his method could work. But Sanders didn't quit. He accepted the rejections and moved on to the next diner, the next cafe, the next opportunity. He is said to have been turned down over 1,000 times. Still, he kept going. Finally, one small restaurant owner agreed to give it a try. The response was immediate and positive. Customers loved it. This first success led to another, and then another. Slowly, the idea began to spread. Sanders would help train the kitchen staff, supply the spices, and ensure quality control. Each new location helped reinforce the brand and grow the reputation of what was becoming known as Kentucky Fried Chicken. By the time he was in his early 70s, Sanders had built a network of franchises across multiple states. His dream had survived disaster and was beginning to thrive once more. He now wore his white suit and black tie everywhere, not just as a gimmick, but as a badge of honor. He had created not just a food product, but a brand identity. Colonel Sanders, as he was now widely called, was more than a cook. He was a living story of resilience, hospitality, and old-fashioned flavor. And he wasn't done yet. The man who had once cooked for hungry travelers at a roadside station was about to take his recipe to the entire world. With each passing year, more restaurants signed on to sell Kentucky Fried Chicken. Word of mouth grew stronger, and customers who tried it once came back for more. By the mid-1950s, the brand was starting to spread far beyond its humble origins. Colonel Sanders continued traveling from town to town, personally visiting franchises, inspecting kitchens, and shaking hands with owners and cooks alike. He believed in the power of personal connection. He wasn't interested in simply making money. He wanted every plate of chicken to carry the same quality and care he had once poured into that small restaurant in Corbin. Franchisees respected him for that. He wasn't a corporate executive in a tall office. He was one of them, someone who had cooked in the kitchen, scrubbed the floors, and served customers face to face. As the franchise network grew, Sanders worked closely with restaurant owners to maintain standards. The 11 herbs and spices remained a tightly guarded secret, mixed in a secure facility and shipped to each location. Only a few people ever knew the full recipe. This secrecy added to the brand's mystique. The red and white striped branding was introduced, and Sanders' image became the official face of KFC. His white suit, goatee, and string tie were instantly recognizable symbols. Customers began to associate the Colonel not just with chicken, but with tradition, trust, and good old-fashioned cooking. In 1964, at the age of 73, Sanders made a life-changing decision. With over 600 franchises now operating, he sold the Kentucky Fried Chicken Corporation to a group of investors for $2 million. Although he no longer owned the company, the deal allowed him to stay on as the brand's ambassador. He would continue to travel, appear in commercials, and make public appearances as the Colonel. The sale brought national infrastructure, marketing, and financial power to KFC. It could now grow faster and farther than Sanders ever could have managed on his own. The Colonel didn't slow down. He still visited franchises, gave interviews, and tasted chicken to ensure it met his standards. Sometimes he even criticized KFC publicly if he felt quality was slipping. His personal reputation mattered to him more than money. And that authenticity, his refusal to compromise on values, only made him more beloved by the public. As the brand expanded, it also moved beyond the borders of the United States. The first overseas KFC opened in Canada in the mid-1960s, followed by outlets in the United Kingdom, Mexico, and Australia. Wherever the Colonel went, he drew crowds. People saw in him a symbol of perseverance, warmth, and something uniquely American. His life story was just as compelling as the food he served. He wasn't born into privilege. He wasn't a trained chef or a wealthy businessman. He had simply refused to quit. And that refusal, to settle, to retire, to stop believing, had created a global phenomenon. By the late 1960s, Kentucky Fried Chicken had become one of the most recognized fast food brands in the world. The menu grew slightly, but the core item, the original recipe chicken, remained the heart of the business. Commercials showed families gathering around buckets of fried chicken, smiling as they shared a meal. And always there was the Colonel, smiling, nodding, wearing his iconic suit. The image of Harlan Sanders had become a symbol not just of KFC, but of success earned the hard way. He proved that you didn't need youth, wealth, or a college degree to make a mark on the world. What you needed was vision, heart, and determination, and above all, a belief in what you were offering others. Colonel Sanders was no longer just a man, he was a legend, a man who turned his final act into his greatest triumph. And the story wasn't finished. KFC was still growing, and Sanders was still spreading his message, one handshake and one bucket at a time. Even after selling the company, Colonel Sanders remained deeply involved with KFC's image and integrity. He may have handed over control, but he never let go of the legacy he had built with his own two hands. Throughout the late 1960s and into the 1970s, Sanders continued to travel tirelessly. He visited new franchise openings, attended ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and starred in advertising campaigns. People loved seeing him in person. He was warm, humorous, and always willing to share a story or pose for a photo with fans. His visits weren't just for show. He would often walk into a kitchen, taste the food, and inspect the cleanliness with the same standards he'd kept since his early days in Corbin. When he was pleased, he'd let the staff know. But when he wasn't, he didn't hesitate to voice his disappointment. This level of honesty became part of his myth. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, even to the corporation that now owned his name. As KFC grew, new executives wanted to streamline operations, cut costs, and introduce new menu items. Sanders worried that these changes could water down the brand. He believed the core success of KFC was its commitment to quality and tradition. He feared losing sight of that would turn his life's work into something unrecognizable. Despite his concerns, the expansion continued. KFC opened locations across Asia, Europe, and South America. The red and white signs appeared in languages Sanders couldn't speak, but the food remained familiar. People from Tokyo to London to Buenos Aires were biting into crispy chicken made with the same recipe first perfected in Kentucky. As he aged, Sanders began to slow down physically, but not mentally. He continued giving interviews, writing letters, and attending public events. He received numerous awards, including recognition from business groups, food organizations, and even world leaders. Still, he preferred to talk about food and people rather than profits or power. He would rather share a meal than deliver a speech. His white suit became more than just clothing. It was a statement of identity. It told the world that the Colonel was still on duty. By the mid-1970s, KFC had become a fixture in American pop culture. Television commercials, magazine ads, and storefronts all carried the image of Colonel Sanders. He was no longer just a founder. He was a symbol. His story was told and retold, always beginning with a small-town man who refused to give up. And while the corporation grew more complex, Sanders remained grounded in simplicity. For him, it was always about the food and the people who came to enjoy it. In his final years, he took satisfaction in knowing that millions of people were enjoying something he had built from nothing. But he never let the success get to his head. When asked how he managed to stay humble, he would simply smile and say, "I've been hungry before." That hunger for food, for purpose, for connection, had driven him all his life. And now it had become a gift he shared with the world. Even as health issues began to take their toll, Sanders remained active. He made public appearances into his late 80s. He passed away in 1980 at the age of 90. His death was mourned across the globe, with tributes pouring in from customers, franchisees, and public figures. Though he was gone, the spirit he left behind remained very much alive. His image continued to appear in advertising, his name on every bucket of chicken. But more importantly, his story became a source of inspiration. A story of resilience, hope, and belief in one's own vision. Colonel Sanders had proven that it's never too late to start over. That the end of one chapter can be the beginning of something far greater. And that with enough grit, seasoning, and heart, even the most unlikely dreams can come true. After Colonel Sanders' passing, Kentucky Fried Chicken entered a new era. One shaped by global business strategies, marketing innovation, and modern fast food competition. But at its heart, the brand still carried the story and image of one determined man who started with nothing. The 1980s and 1990s saw KFC become a household name not only in America, but around the world. As international franchises expanded, the company had to adapt its menu and operations to meet diverse tastes and cultures. In Japan, KFC became a Christmas tradition, where families would pre-order buckets weeks in advance. In China, the brand positioned itself as a premium, trustworthy American product during a time of rapid economic growth. In other parts of Asia, Latin America, and Europe, KFC outlets offered unique items like rice-based dishes, local spices, and regional sauces. But no matter where it opened, the one constant was the original recipe chicken. The iconic red and white buckets, the smiling face of Colonel Sanders, and the promise of crispy, golden flavor created a shared experience across cultures. During this time, the brand also began reimagining its marketing. Commercials, jingles, and mascot appearances continued to feature Colonel Sanders as a timeless figure, even though he had been gone for years. Different actors occasionally portrayed the Colonel, but the core message stayed the same. This was food made with care, rooted in tradition. In the United States, KFC faced fierce competition from other fast food giants. Chains like McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's were expanding rapidly and capturing the public's attention. To keep pace, KFC introduced new menu items: spicy wings, grilled chicken, popcorn chicken, and combo meals. They renovated restaurants, improved service times, and embraced drive-through culture. At times, these changes strayed from the original simplicity of the brand. Sales fluctuated, and critics questioned whether the heart of KFC was being lost in the pursuit of modernization. But every time the brand leaned into its roots, celebrating Sanders, highlighting quality ingredients, and emphasizing heritage, it found renewed strength. By the early 2000s, KFC began investing in global rebranding. They shortened the name officially from Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC, a move meant to modernize the brand and move away from negative connotations of fried. This shift brought a fresh design, new packaging, and updated slogans. Still, Colonel Sanders remained the centerpiece. His face stayed on the logo, reminding customers that the food they loved came from a real person with a real story. He wasn't just a marketing tool. He was the soul of the company. Franchise owners continued to uphold his values, focusing on customer satisfaction, consistency, and community involvement. Many KFC locations supported local events, charities, and school programs. The story of Sanders was often shared in training programs, reminding employees that they were part of something bigger than just fast food. His journey from a small-town kitchen to global icon was more than history. It was a philosophy. Hard work, respect, and pride in quality were the standards every KFC aimed to uphold. Technology also became part of the KFC journey. The brand embraced digital ordering, delivery apps, and social media engagement. They used nostalgia wisely, reviving vintage ads, telling Sanders' story to a new generation, and reinforcing the sense of tradition and trust. In countries like India, South Africa, and the Philippines, KFC became a place where people gathered to celebrate milestones, share family dinners, and enjoy comfort food that felt both global and local. This dual identity, rooted in American tradition, adapted for international flavor, made KFC a rare success story in the complex world of global franchising. While food trends shifted toward health-conscious eating, KFC also introduced grilled and plant-based options. These moves allowed them to evolve without abandoning their core. By the end of the 2010s, KFC had more than 23,000 restaurants in over 140 countries. It was not just a brand. It was a symbol of persistence, adaptation, and staying true to one's roots. The Colonel's legacy remained at the center of it all. His image wasn't just a reminder of the past. It was a challenge to future generations. A challenge to dream big, work hard, and never give up, no matter how many times life tries to knock you down. As the 2020s began, KFC continued to thrive in a world that was changing faster than ever before. The fast food industry faced new challenges, from health trends and supply chain disruptions to the rise of digital ordering and global pandemics. But through it all, KFC stood strong, adapting its model while keeping its heart intact. Colonel Sanders' story still served as a guidepost, reminding the brand to stay grounded in quality, consistency, and customer care. Drive-through and delivery became more important than ever. KFC invested heavily in mobile apps, contactless payment systems, and ghost kitchens to serve customers quickly and safely. They revamped store designs to make them more modern, efficient, and customer-friendly. In many places, the dining area shrank while drive-through lanes expanded. Yet the classic menu remained a comfort to loyal fans. The original recipe chicken still led the way, joined by newer innovations that blended tradition with contemporary tastes. Marketing in the 2020s leaned into humor, nostalgia, and storytelling. New actors portrayed Colonel Sanders in funny, memorable commercials. Each version offered a twist: Cowboy Colonel, Firefighter Colonel, and even Celebrity Colonels. These creative campaigns introduced the legend to younger audiences while keeping the brand fresh and entertaining. At the same time, KFC recommitted to corporate social responsibility. It launched sustainability efforts, from reducing packaging waste to sourcing more ethical ingredients. The company supported community initiatives and charities around the world, honoring the Colonel's legacy of giving back. Training programs emphasized not just speed and accuracy, but warmth and hospitality, reminding employees that every customer deserves kindness. Even as technology advanced, the soul of the brand stayed human. Whether someone ordered through an app or walked into a restaurant, the experience aimed to feel genuine and inviting. In the face of competition from healthier brands and newer chains, KFC doubled down on what made it special. Unique flavor, cultural adaptability, and the emotional connection built over generations. Restaurants in Kenya, Vietnam, Egypt, and Brazil offered local variations of the menu, proving once again that the brand could be both global and personal. KFC became more than just a meal. It was a symbol of shared moments, from birthday parties to late-night cravings. It offered familiarity in a fast-changing world, all while quietly evolving behind the scenes. In advertising, the story of Colonel Sanders continued to inspire. Campaigns emphasized his age, failures, and refusal to quit, encouraging people of all backgrounds to believe in second chances. Schools and universities began referencing his story in business classes as a case study in branding, entrepreneurship, and resilience. He became a motivational figure for aspiring business owners and creatives alike, a reminder that it's never too late to begin again. As the decade continues, KFC faces ongoing challenges, changing consumer habits, economic pressures, and environmental responsibility. But if history has taught us anything, it's that KFC knows how to adapt without losing its identity. From a gas station in Kentucky to a table in Seoul, a delivery box in Toronto, or a party bucket in Lagos, the journey of Kentucky Fried Chicken continues. It's a journey powered by innovation, trust, and the flavor that began with one man's vision. Colonel Sanders may no longer walk the earth, but his presence remains in every bite, every sign, and every story told by those who followed in his footsteps. And his legacy will likely endure as long as people value perseverance, passion, and the simple joy of a well-cooked meal shared with others. From a young boy in rural Indiana cooking for his siblings to a global icon in a white suit, Colonel Harland Sanders' story is a powerful reminder that age, failure, and setbacks are not the end. They can be the beginning of something greater. He didn't invent fried chicken, but he perfected how to serve it with pride, patience, and persistence. Through the highs and lows, he stayed true to his values, building something that fed more than just hunger. It fed hope. KFC is more than a fast food chain. It's a living legacy of one man's refusal to quit, his belief in doing things right, and his willingness to start over when the world said no. So the next time you see a bucket of chicken or the smiling face of Colonel Sanders, remember, you're not just looking at a logo. You're seeing a lifetime of grit, flavor, and vision. Thank you for watching this story. If it inspired you, let us know in the comments. And never forget, your best chapter might still be ahead.